that goes into it ahead of time, lots that goes into it afterwards. And so if young people can start to be exposed to that and serve in even some small ways, maybe they'll get some joy in serving Jesus, as we all do. So our theme is getting involved. If you're on lesson number 4 on page number 35, you'll see that at the very bottom of the page, our desire is to never quench or hinder the burden for ministry, but rather fan the flame that God has sparked. I believe that every Christian receives a spiritual gift. At the moment of their salvation, they have a supernatural ability from God to serve him in a way that maybe nobody else in their area can serve him. Maybe you've met a really strong evangelist, or a great leader in the church, or a good teacher, or just somebody who helps and is hospitable. Every single Christian has a unique gift from the Lord, and we have to fan that flame. We have to encourage that spark. I believe that even children have the ability to serve the Lord. It's not something that you have to wait until you grow up to have. We believe that every single Christian is the same before God. So if you're a lady, in God's eyes, you're the same as a man. If you're a child, in God's eyes, you're the same as a lady. God doesn't look at all of these differences that we look at. As far as giving salvation, the opportunity to serve him, the power of prayer, the ability to reach others for Jesus Christ, we're all equal. And that's true whether you're 13 years old or 31 years old. Everybody can serve the Lord Jesus Christ. So we should try to encourage that spiritual gift, help them realize that they have the resources to serve the Lord, and really do a great job for him. Now, I wanted to start off with something cute. There's a little girl on the internet who found her dad's phone and thought that she was FaceTiming somebody. And I just want you to see this little girl. She's so cute.
This little girl set up her dad's phone thinking she was on FaceTime with another girl, telling her this.
You look so pretty.
Her dad heard her in the background talking to someone, wondering who she was talking to.
Who looks so pretty?
You look so pretty.
Who?
You look so pretty, Daddy.
What girl?
That girl on your phone.
When she found out it was her, she was pretty happy with the news.
That's you, Charlie.
Kids are so cute, and they have so much to offer. And we should never discourage them from being involved or make them just sit in a corner and not do anything. So we want to talk about getting children involved, having a heart for ministry. And I want to ask you, what if somebody has some intellectual challenges? Can they still be involved in church? Here's a little slide, Randy, if you don't mind putting it up, a little quote. Don't worry if you're not the smartest Christian. Remember, Moses started out as a basket case, right? So he was in a little basket there as a baby. So maybe you're not the most talented person. Can the Lord still use you? If you have a child who has some sort of a developmental problem, can they still be used by the Lord? Oh, yeah, absolutely. There are no limits with the Lord, are there? Every one of us is loved by him. And I don't believe that God makes any mistakes. Do you? Do you believe that when a little child is born and they have some sort of a mental or emotional or physical disability and they are challenged in some way and not able to maybe walk or talk as easily as some of us, do you think that God made a mistake with that child? No. I believe that every child is special and loved and useful. And that's why we encourage children to be born. If my wife had a little baby in her womb and the doctor said, oh no, we're sorry, this little baby is going to have some sort of a challenge growing up, we think that you should abort the child because the poor child will have a harder life than if they were born without this challenge. You think that we should abort the child? No, the children should be allowed to come into this world, and everybody has value and purpose. And remember that life is eternal. So if that child is allowed to be born and they only have 5 years or 6 months or a few days on this earth, they get to live forever with Jesus and get to go and be with him. So why would we take that away from that child? We should allow them to develop and grow and learn and then go and be with the Lord forever. So we should never take a life away from somebody because we don't value it. God values everybody's life. And I believe that all children have something to offer, even if they can't speak the same way that I do, or their brain doesn't work the same way that I do, that mine does. I read about this girl on the internet. Her name was Erin, and she has something called the autism spectrum disorder. And that apparently is a lifelong developmental disability which affects how people communicate and interact with the world. So they don't necessarily speak the same way that I do. They don't communicate the same way that I do. And Erin says this when she was a young girl in church. She says she once locked herself in the bathroom during a youth weekend and had to be coaxed out by a long-suffering youth leader. It wasn't that the other kids were mean to her, far from it. She simply found that it was impossible to interact with them and preferred to be alone in a toilet cubicle than lonely in a room full of people. Now, fortunately, she says that her parents and others were able to help her, and through a support worker and through medication and other means, she was able to develop some of her strengths and cope with some of her weaknesses. But I wanted to start this little lesson about children serving in a way that helps all of us to realize that they're not all comfortable standing before someone. It's not always easy for a child to stand on the stage and sing or to take up the offering. Some children have a lot of fear and anxiety in their hearts. And is there a way that we can encourage them to take part? Is the only way to take part in a church to stand on a stage? Is that the only thing that a child can do? What else could a child do in church?
When they're little, and if you're fine for cleaning the church, they can make it. I saw two little girls dusting moving the books and dusting all the shelves off of it one time we were there too.
Yeah, that's right. They can dust and clean, and there's lots of things that need to be done behind the scenes in a local church. Think about it even for you. Is the only thing that you can do in the local church stand and give a sermon? Is there something else that you could do? You could sit and listen, that's right, and learn. There's an excellent example right there. Maya's back there helping just put those slides through and help us see all these different little videos and things like that. She doesn't have to be up on the platform if she doesn't want to be. She can do something back there. And thank you, Maya. We appreciate you doing that. It's very important. It's a big help to me. And there's also giving. We can share with the local church. We can pray. There's so many things that we can do. I wanted to encourage you as well that there were people in the Bible who seemed to have some mental and physical challenges. David at times seemed to be very erratic in the Psalms. Elijah was very depressed at one time. And Nebuchadnezzar, you might remember, he seemed to be like a wild man, even pawing at the ground like an old animal. So I think that no matter what a child is like, we should be very welcoming and friendly and understanding towards them. We shouldn't expect that all children fit into this one particular mold of what we think a young Christian boy or girl should be. We should be very welcoming and friendly and understanding to all people, especially those with a developmental disability. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about bringing your children to church. How about welcoming the children when they're there? You remember how the disciples were when they brought the children to Jesus? Were the disciples glad to have all of those children? No. Why would a church maybe be a little nervous if a busload of children showed up here on Sunday morning? Why would the pastor or the deacons maybe say, "Uh-oh, we're going to have a hard Sunday this morning"? The amount of energy, yeah, that's right. They may upset the normal routine, that's right. Yes, go ahead, Maya. The noise, yes, that's right. Children are sometimes noisy, aren't they? Yeah. And is that okay? Is it okay to have our routine upset every once in a while? Or are we legalistic? Are we just, you have to start at 9:45, you have to end at 9:30, you have to sing 3 songs, and you have to stand up at this time and sit down? Are we religious in that we have to have a certain set of rules and regulations and nobody can interrupt that? Or do we have a bit of grace? Do we have a bit of understanding and a little bit of compassion towards people? Yeah, we've got to not be so rigid, especially when it comes to children, right? That's a good example. They dropped a man through the ceiling and took the tiles right off the roof, and boy. Yeah, imagine what the Board of Trustees would have thought. They would have had a meeting right away Monday night. Yeah, you were going to say something, Chris?
Kids do know that a church is a different place. They know that they can't be themselves like they like to be, out of order and talking when they want to talk and that sort of thing. So I don't think it hurts to mention about, being good for your ears and be respectful.
Right.
Respect is one of those things that are missing in our communities these days.
Mm-hmm.
They don't even know what the word means.
So I think what you're getting at is, yes. I think what you're getting at is that we need to strike a balance there. We can't be so rigid that the children don't feel welcome, but we can't allow a child to run the place either, right? There has to be some rules and there has to be some respect. I remember a teacher of mine telling me one time that when you're teaching children, if you try to be their friend first, you never get their respect. But if you try to get their respect first, then you can be their friend later. So you have to make sure to set a bit of a tone with children, but not be so hard and rigid that they don't feel welcome. Okay, and then what about giving children an opportunity to be involved? How can a church encourage a child that does come? What are some of the jobs that they could do? Like, for example, could we encourage them to hand out bulletins when people were coming in or greet people? Could they lead a song or sing or play? Maybe play the piano or play a guitar? Yes, you had an idea? Just be a friend to them? Yeah, it makes all the difference, doesn't it? If you've ever been in an uncomfortable environment, maybe at a banquet or at a school play or something, and you're off on your own and you don't fit in, and then somebody comes and they make you feel welcome and sit with you, makes a big difference. Just being friendly, that's right. All right, I wanted to read in your workbook on page 35. Right at the end there, I guess we read that about fanning the flame. And then at the top of page 36, it says, God has entrusted to Christian parents the responsibility and privilege of boosting their children's interest in and shaping their children's heart for ministry. And it gives 3 ideas there. It says they need direction, motivation, and prompting. Children do need a little direction, don't they, if they're going to be involved in church? We can't just say, all right, stand up and say anything, tell a joke or do a talent. No, it has to be honoring to the Lord, doesn't it? We're in church. You can't just tell any old joke or you can't just sing any song. It has to honor and magnify the Lord. So they need some direction and they need a little prompting too, don't they? Sometimes a child will get all ready to do something in the church, and they get right there and they can't do it. They're too afraid, or they're too nervous, or they stand up and they look out at all the people and their mind just goes blank. So they need a little encouragement, don't they? There's nothing wrong if a child stands up to do something and they can't do it, for us to say, that's okay, just take a minute. Maybe you just need to take a breath and it'll come to you, or try it next Sunday. Maybe come back and try it again. We can't be too hard on them or expect them to do everything perfectly well the first time. I also wanted to highlight the fact that if in the home a family will speak well of the church and well of the pastor, as opposed to criticizing the people in the church and criticizing the pastor and the deacons, maybe the children will want to be more involved. Having a negative view of the church will filter down to the boys and girls that are around the table. If I'm always complaining about the deacons and complaining about the Sunday school teachers or whatever it might be, why would the children want to go and be part of that? We have to not praise them in a sense that they're wonderful, but we have to lift up and encourage children to go and want to be part of the local church.
Also by having the missionaries in your home,
Oh, that's a good idea.
visiting, the kids get used to them and they get to talk to them, find their experiences.
That's right, yeah. If a missionary is nearby and maybe speaking at the church, or a Christian singer, having them out for a meal or into your home will really encourage the boys and girls to love what they do, perhaps, and want to go to Bible school. Let's go over to Colossians chapter 3 for a moment. Colossians chapter 3. And let's read in verse number 21 of Colossians chapter 3. It has the word discourage in it. And maybe you've had somebody discourage you over the years. Colossians 3:21 says, "Fathers, provoke not your children to anger, lest they be discouraged." And if you look in your parenting workbook, you'll see, for example, on page number 36 at the bottom, there are 8 hindrances as far as a child's heart growing towards ministry. 8 ways that we can discourage them, and they're listed through the rest of the textbook there. What are some thoughts that come to your mind as far as trying to hinder or criticize or be very legalistic towards children when it comes to serving in the local church? How can we discourage children not to be involved in the things of God? Yeah, not serving the Lord with gladness. That's right. It can be very easy for children to pick up on a negative attitude towards anything. If you don't like sports or you don't like education, the child will pick up on that. But if we love church and we love Jesus and we love the Bible, then hopefully they will pick up on that as well. Any other thoughts?
Appreciation in many forms is pretty important to know in the regular conversation. I think the kids need to know that appreciation happens a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and that they need to learn what appreciation means.
Yeah,
You know, they don't think about it.
that's right.
Yeah, appreciation I think is very important for the kids to learn.
Do we have a ton of preachers who are coming up through our churches who are ready to take over the churches from all of us old guys? I mean, look around at all of the pastors that you know. Are they all 20 and 25 and 30 years old, or are they all 50 and 60 and 70 years old? We need more preachers in the church. And what about our missionaries? Do we have lots of people in Bible school right now and training to be missionaries, and lots of missionaries raising support? Every Sunday we've got a new 20-year-old who's ready to go to some far-off place and preach the gospel. And what about Christian singers? Do we just line them up here Sunday after Sunday? All kinds of young people want to sing for the Lord and serve the Lord. No, there's not a lot if you think about it. a lot of the Christians who are involved in ministry are getting older, and they're not going to be able to do what they do for much longer. And so we've got to train a new generation of preachers and missionaries and Christian singers to play the piano and to take part in leading the local church. And where are we going to get them? They have to come from the boys and girls and young people that will soon be 13 and 16 and 24 years old, and we've got to get them involved in the local church. And I'm so thankful. When I was just a little boy, my parents had me very involved in the local church. And when I was 12 years old, our church had a youth service. They had maybe 15 or so of us young people in the church, and one of the girls was going to play the piano in an evening service, and all of us were going to form a little choir and sing a couple of hymns for the church. And then, let's see, one of the girls was going to give her testimony, and there was going to be a trio, I think, and 2 or 3 were going to sing a special song, and they were looking for a preacher. And none of the boys would volunteer to be the preacher. So the pastor and deacons got together, and without my knowledge, my father volunteered me to be the preacher. I was 12 years old, and he said, I think my son could be the preacher. So he came home and he said, on such and such a date at the youth service, you're going to do the preaching. Now, if you know me, I'm still nervous right now. I do not like to be in front of people. I get red-faced very easily. I forget what I'm going to say. I stumble over my words. And I've been doing this for 30 years. So imagine what I was like as a 12-year-old. I was so embarrassed and backward and wanted to hide behind the pulpit more than I wanted to say anything. But the pastor came over, and he went through a little sermon with me from Luke's gospel. I can still think of it today. It was the very first sermon that I ever preached. You'll either serve God or mammon. You'll love one and not the other. You'll cleave to one but not the other. You cannot serve God and money. And he got a little 3-point sermon together with me, and I was supposed to preach for about 10 or 15 minutes. I said the whole thing in 5 minutes. I was so nervous. I just went through it all so quickly. But at the end of the service, all of the nice ladies in the church, they all came over and they said, oh, that was the greatest sermon that we ever heard. We're going to, you're going to be the next Billy Graham, and you're going to be a big evangelist, and you'll be a pastor one day. And even though I didn't like it, and I didn't think I did a good job, I listened to what all those ladies said to me. And so when I was 13 and I was 14 and I was 15, if we had another youth service, guess who they asked to preach? Me. And then when we went to a nursing home and we were singing for the old people, guess who they'd asked to give a little devotional? Me. And so I got lots of experience when I was 15 and 16 and 17 to stand up in front of people. And then when I was 18 and I graduated from high school, my pastor said to me, his name was Dwight Munn, he said, why don't you spend the summer working with me? And I'll take you around and show you what a pastor does. And I spent the whole summer, every day, I'd go to his house in the morning. He had his office in his house. And I'd go to his house every morning, and he would show me how to study the Bible. And then every afternoon, we'd go out visiting, and we'd go to see this folk at the old folks' home, or we'd go to see this person in the hospital. The first pastoral visits that I ever made was with my own pastor taking me to a nursing home or a special care home, and he would tell me afterwards, okay, this was good, or that wasn't good, you did this well. And then Pastor Wendell Calder, who's the director and founder of the Living Waters Bible Camp, he just passed away last week. He came to see our church and speak at our church, and my parents had him at our home for a lunch. And afterwards, he said to me, what are you going to do for the rest of your life? And I said, I don't know. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. And he said, I think you should go to the Word of Life Bible Institute and become a pastor. So he got me the application. He wrote his name on it and said that I should be accepted. I filled it out. He took it to Word of Life for me. And my life just went in this direction. I have done the same things for 30 years now. I get up in the morning, I study the Bible. In the afternoon, I go out and visit people. and I try to encourage the church. And the whole thing was because somebody in the local church, my dad and the deacons and the pastor and the nice old ladies, they all saw that the Lord could use me. And they all encouraged me all the way along, and they still encourage me to this day. And it's not the only way, but it's one of the good ways that the Lord uses to help young people see that they can do something for the Lord. I never thought that the Lord could use me. I still don't think that the Lord could use me. But he does, and he helps me every day to go out and to try and encourage somebody, to get them interested in the Bible, and to love Jesus with all of their heart. And we need more and more young people, male and female, young and old. And so I want you to think today, if there's some young person that you might know who you say, I think the Lord could use them to sing in the church, or to lead in the church, or to serve in the church, or to maybe even be a pastor or a missionary. And it doesn't happen all at once. It may take years for them. But let's pray for them and encourage them and use them as much as possible, because we're not going to be here much longer. And I don't know about you, but I don't really like the phrase, the children are the church of tomorrow. I know what people mean when they say it, that yes, in a few years we're not going to be here and the children will be the ones serving the Lord. But I think that the children are the church of today. If the Lord has his hand upon them, they are part of the church as much as anybody else. And we should be using them today to serve him and to love him. Does anybody have any other comments that they wanted to make about getting children involved in ministry? Well, we have some great young people in this local church, that's for sure, and they seem to have a desire to serve the Lord. And I know Todd and Blake and many others are always encouraging them. Corey and many others are encouraging the children to be involved, and we really want them to be involved. I love it when children are taking part. Okay, next week we'll go on to Growing Your Child's Heart for Ministry Part 2. It's on page number 43. And we're getting pretty close to the end because there's only 8 lessons in this little book. And next week we'll be on lesson 5. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I pray that everybody would think about a child here who maybe could be greatly used by the Lord. And it may be the one that we would never expect. It may be one that has a few challenges or difficulties, and yet you can mightily use them. I remember when Samuel came to Jesse's house and they were looking for a new king, and everyone thought that it would be Eliab, the oldest, or surely the second or the third, but it was the young little boy out in the fields keeping the sheep, David. And nobody thought that David could do it, but you had your hand upon him, and because he humbly followed you, you were able to mightily use him. So help us to seek out a little David or a little Esther today who could serve you mightily, and encourage them and never discourage them,